Today we're breaking down a side of hamachi and going from this to this. You'll find a row of pin bones running from the head to the tail of the fish. Cut on one side of these bones to separate the thick back loin of the fish. You will need a few passes with a knife from head to tail to get to the skin. Then cut the tail off. It's all connective tissue and doesn't taste good. I'll turn my fish around to get better access to that thick back loin. Near the head, you're likely to hit some tough, bony parts. If that happens, cut between the flesh and the skin in the thickest part to help you separate the back loin. Finally, here it is. Now take off the part of the fish closest to the head. It's called the collar, like the color of a shirt, not the color blue. According to all the native speakers of English, I have a serious problem pronouncing these two words, so I apologize in advance about confusing you. Cut between the pin bones to get through this area, and here's our collar. It's delicious, grilled or broiled. Now let's switch from a chef's knife to a boning knife to remove the rib bones and the belly membrane. Slide the knife under them and slowly cut towards the thin area. Then point the knife up and cut under the rib bones towards the row of pin bones. Once you have a big enough flap, I find it more comfortable to lift it up and use the tip of my knife to get under the rest of the rib bones. And now I just need to cut towards the thin part of the belly. This is probably the most challenging part of taking hamachi apart, so take your time and don't rush the step. I save the rib bones for grilling and broiling. There is always some meat on them. Now let's cut the row of pin bones out. That's one of the few parts I discard because most of the meat on the pin bones is the brown bloodline, whose texture and flavor is not my cup of tea. Our hamachi is now boneless, and we need to remove its skin. Place the fish close to the edge of the board, insert a boning knife between the skin and the flesh at the tail, pull the skin to one side and your knife to the other side. If you're right-handed, your knife would be cutting from left to right. If you are left-handed, you'll be cutting from right to left. Now remove the skin from the thick loin. Our next step is to remove most of the brown flesh. Here it is on one side, and here's a huge chunk of it on the other side. This brown meat is the bloodline, and how much you leave on your fish depends on how it tastes to you. Taste it and decide for yourself. If you don't find it offensive, you don't need to trim as much as I'm doing here. Cut the tail off and save for cooking. It has too much connective tissue to taste good raw. Now cut the loin into 3 blocks. Dividing the fish into long, flat sections will facilitate the slicing. Let's go back to the belly area of the fish. The really skinny part is very greasy, and I prefer to save it for grilling and broiling instead of serving it raw. Divide the remaining belly into 2 long sections. And now we're ready to slice. Take one of the blocks and locate its grain. Position your knife perpendicular to the grain and slice diagonally, tilting your knife to get wider pieces. You can use a chef's knife or a one-sided yanagiba knife if you have one. Make sure to start each cut in the back of the knife and finish with the tip. The goal is to get the whole slice finished with one stroke to avoid jagged pieces. Apply pressure with your fingertips to stabilize the fish. Also note that as a right-handed cook, I'm slicing from left to right. This is the opposite of how I would cut vegetables. I think that's enough fish. Let's make a few garnishes. Here is a vinaigrette we'll need for the plum salad. 1 tablespoon apple cider vinegar or some other acidic ingredient. 2 teaspoons Dijon mustard. Whisk the mustard into the vinegar until completely dissolved. Add 1 teaspoon of toasted sesame oil and 1 tablespoon of olive oil, whisking constantly. Since hamachi is so fatty, I'm making my vinaigrette with way less oil than usual. Season with salt and mix to combine. Slice some spring onions. Scallions, red onions, or shallots would also work. And add to the bowl with dressing. Then cut a plum in half, remove the pit, and slice it paper thin. This can also be done on a mandolin, and you're welcome to improvise with all sorts of fruit, nectarines, mangoes, grapes. Toss the plums with onions and dressing. Taste and adjust for salt. For the sauce, I'll combine a teaspoon of neri goma. That's black sesame paste that you can buy in the Japanese market or online. I'll link to an Amazon option below this video. Tahini would be a good substitute. For the creamy base, I'm using a 1/4 cup of labne. It's like Greek yogurt, but made with more cream than milk. If you can't find it, use sour cream or the fattiest Greek yogurt you can find. Add a pinch of salt, and if working with a very thick yogurt, add a splash of water as necessary. You want the consistency to be similar to mayo. Mix everything thoroughly, taste, and adjust for salt. Spread a bit of sauce on the plate. Fold or roll up pieces of hamachi and arrange them on top. We're shooting for abstract and cool here. Sprinkle hamachi with salt. Make sure your hand is high and the distribution is even. Unevenly seasoned food sucks, no matter how pretty. Roll up slices of plum and arrange between hamachi pieces. This is where I had a slight camera malfunction and the part of drizzling a bit of spring onions and vinaigrette didn't get recorded. But that's okay, you're smart and know that I wouldn't slice all those onions for nothing. Garnish with a few cilantro leaves or microgreens, and we have a stunning hamachi dish. Sauce adds just a hint of nuttiness without smothering the fish, and the plum salad adds much needed acidity and crunch to balance the richness of hamachi. Your plate composition should be guided not only by the aesthetics, but by the harmony of textures and flavors. And on this delicious note, the sushi series comes to the end. What will Helen tackle next? I have something up my sleeve, so don't forget to subscribe to Helen's Kitchen channel. And if you're ever in the Boston area, maybe I'll see you in one of my classes.